Hello students, today we are going to look at marine ecosystems, which is a part of your adaptive ecosystems. Okay, right? So that chapter which we are going to see here is adaptations in different ecosystems. Okay, adaptations in different ecosystems. Now in that chapter, marine ecosystems is a subheading. Okay, right? Now when we are saying marine ecosystem, so marine means what? Water. To be more specific, seawater. Okay, right? Now seawater or ocean water, anything is a marine ecosystem. Now you might have learnt in the say evolution theory that most of the living creatures, they have evolved from the water. They have come from the water. So the evolution of organisms started mostly from 2000 million years ago. Okay, it started around 2000 million years ago, where from simple organisms, okay, complex organisms started coming out. Okay, so from simple organisms, complex organisms also started evolving. Now, when these simple organisms started coming on to the land, okay, they started becoming complex because the environment which is present in the water is different than compared to the land. So when these organisms started coming onto the land, they started evolving into different adaptations. That is, they started adapting themselves differently so that they can adapt onto the atmosphere or the nature which is present on the land. Okay, right? So it is basically to understand that complex organisms which we see around these days, okay, are basically they have evolved from simple organisms which were present in the seas and the oceans. Okay, now how do we say that they have come from there? Okay, because of the organelle which is the organelle which is the protoplasm. Okay. Now, what is the meaning of a protoplasm? Now, protoplasm is the living part of a cell. Okay, protoplasm is the living part of a cell, and to be more specific, it is cytoplasm plus nucleus. Okay, cytoplasm plus nucleus together, they form the protoplasm, okay, which is the living part of the cell. So when the protoplasm was analyzed, they were able to see samples from the marine. Okay, right? They were able to see samples from the marine. That means the salt content in that protoplasm was similar to the salt content in the marine ecosystem. So which is a strong evidence that these creatures have evolved from the sea or from the marine ecosystem. All right. Now moving on. Now, okay. Now, see, you know that oceans are covered from a very long. They are there from many years. Okay. I am erasing this. Okay. All right. Now, oceans are present from many years. Before even the life started, they were there. The life started when the oceans were present. Okay, right? Now, what you should understand here is when I say ocean started, now ocean, it is spread across the entire stretch of the earth. That is, 3/4 of the earth is covered with water. Okay, 3/4 of it is covered with water. Out of that, 2/3, that is 1/4 is fresh water and the rest is the ocean water. So the concentration or the content of ocean water is more than compared to the fresh water which is available. All right. So if we divide the ocean parts, say for example, Okay, right? So if we divide the three oceans, say for example, you have the Indian Ocean, then you have the Pacific Ocean, okay, then you have the Bay of Bengal. Okay, you have the Bay of Bengal. So these three oceans, now they will have three different types of ecosystem because they are widely spread. So oceans, when they are widely spread, all of them will have different ecosystems, or they will have different conditions. That is, they will have different concentrations of salts, different concentrations of minerals, okay, right? So because of that, there were various creatures which have adapted to stay in Indian Ocean. Then some creatures, they have adapted to stay in Pacific Ocean. Some of them, they adapted to stay in the Bay of Bengal. All right. So because the ocean spread is very, very high, very vast, okay, because of that, the organisms were able to evolve and sustain themselves according to the conditions of these oceans. All right. I hope I'm clear with this. Now let's go on a little further. Now, okay, now you know that in all these three oceans, okay, there are temperature variations, okay, and there are salt concentration variations, okay, and there are various places where only specific creatures are found in all these three. Only specific creatures. Some creatures are only found. Okay, that means if some creature is seen in the Indian Ocean, it is not seen in the Pacific. It is not seen in the Bay of Bengal. Why is that? It is because there the conditions are suitable for that particular organism to survive. Otherwise, it will not be able to survive. All right, children. Now, moving on. Now, if you see in all these three oceans, there is a depth, one common factor, which is the depth. Okay, which is the depth. And when there is depth, so if we go, we'll draw, as the depth increases, the pressure also increases. Okay, as the depth increases, the pressure also increases. Okay, right? So what is pressure? Pressure is equal to force by area. Okay, so we are not discussing physics here, we are discussing bio, but I just wanted to explain you this. Pressure is equal to force by area. So as the area becomes, say, less, the force is more. That is what is basically here, pressure. Okay, but what happens here in the ocean, as the depth increases, okay, the pressure also increases. Okay, as the depth increases, the pressure also increases. So when the pressure increases, the organisms also which are living in the marine ecosystem, they have to adapt it to that change in pressure accordingly. So you might have seen that there will be whales, there will be otters, there will be sea lions, there will be walrus, okay, then there will be fishes which are, some of them are seen on the top, some of them are seen at the bottom, and some of them are seen on the near the ocean bed. Now these three different phases in the oceans are, because when there are three different phases, now these three different phases are governed by a single one, which is a single term, which is the pressure. Okay, so an organism which is staying in that particular region has to acclimatize with the pressure difference in that particular region. Okay, now if it is not able to do it, then the pressure will take over. Okay, right? Now say for example we are there. Okay, now we are there, that means when we are diving deep inside, okay, our blood cannot be compressed. Okay, whatever blood is there, our blood cannot be compressed. So that is why our blood will not be able to take more than, say, 80 meters of depth. Okay, that is the highest record, I suppose. So 80 meters of depth, it cannot take more than that, and the body can actually burst open because of the pressure. Okay, right? But the organisms which have evolved or which have adapted to that particular system, what they do is they do not allow the they allow the blood to compress. Okay, so when they allow the blood to compress, then what happens? The lungs also compresses. So lungs compresses, and when the lung compresses, that means the air is escaping out. Now when the air is escaping out, the marine organisms make sure that there is little amount of air which is left in the lungs, which is sufficient enough for them to breathe. Okay, right? So that is how they actually swim, that we are going to discuss in the later part of the chapter. Now moving on, coming to the pressure here. Okay, now as we go deep, okay, as we go deep into the ocean, okay, right? So for every 10 meters, okay, for every 10 meters there is an increase of pressure. Okay, for every 10 meters pressure increases. Okay, for every 10 meters pressure increases by 1 atmosphere. Okay, pressure increases by 1 atmosphere. Now 1 atmosphere is how much? 10 to the power of 5 Newton per meter square. Okay, 10 to the power of 5 Newton per meter square. So that is pressure at 1 atmosphere. Okay, so for every 10 meters the organism dives, the pressure is increasing by 1 atmosphere, which is a lot. Okay, right? Now we will see, we have seen what a marine ecosystem is, and also we have seen how the pressure variation is making the organisms to survive. Now we will see the next part here, which is a part of the marine ecosystem only, but it is a subheading which is called as, secret of swimming. Okay, right. So when we say secret of swimming, that means what? Swimming is a natural thing that the marine organisms do. Now even we also learn to swim. Okay, we also learn to swim, but we are shallow swimmers. That means we stay on the top and swim, and if we go down to the deep, we will not be able to hold our breath. Now I'm talking about the professional swimmers who do, they will not be able to hold their breath for more than 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, not more than 2 to 3 minutes. After that they will suffocate. But organisms which are there, okay, organisms which are there, now these organisms, they dive deep into the ocean. Now say for example, if we are talking about a whale, okay, then if we are talking about a seal, okay, marine seal, okay, they dive deep down into the oceans. Now how are they able to do that? Now if you have seen any videos of a whale dying on the seashore or a seal dying on the seashore, now what they do, once the lungs is filled with air, the seal is able to float on top of the water. Now if the seal is wishing to go down, what it does this very, very beautifully. It removes the air from the lungs, first thing. Okay, so when it removes the air from the lungs, most of the oxygen is, say whatever oxygen is there which is being accumulated in the lung, now that oxygen, I'm talking about the seal here, now even in the whale the same thing happens. So when I say seal, most of the oxygen, okay, is transferred. Okay, it is transferred to the muscle. Okay, it is transferred to the muscle. Now when the oxygen combines with the muscle which is present in the seal, okay, right, now that is called as, it forms myoglobin. Okay, just like hemoglobin here, it forms a protein called as myoglobin. Okay, myo means muscle, globin is the protein. Okay, now if the seal is cut open and seen, okay, if the seal is cut open and seen, or if you take a sample of a muscle in the seal, okay, you will see that this muscle layer is very, very, very thick. Okay, it is very, very thick. That means though it is red in color, it almost appears black. Okay, it almost appears black. Why? Because the oxygen has combined with the globin protein, that is the globin protein in the muscle, and it has formed myoglobin, and it is very, very dense. Okay, right? Okay, so when that denseness occurs, so when there is a lot of oxygen which is present in the muscles, so seal is able to dive into the ocean, and it is able to just say what you should say glide in the water. Okay, so when the seal is in the water, it does not require more effort to dive deep because of this, because the muscles are constantly supplying with oxygen. Okay, and the seal empties its lungs. Okay, now if it wishes to come up, some of the oxygen is transferred back into the lungs, and then the lungs become heavier, and there the seal is able to float on the top. Now similar thing also happens in a whale. Okay, so that is how the organisms swim in the particular ocean. Okay, right? Now moving on, if there are animals, if you say they are deep down inside the sea. Okay, they are say surface feeders or the bottom feeders. Okay, there are surface feeders and bottom feeders. Now when these are diving deep into the ocean, okay, right, now they have certain things called as bladders inside their bodies. Okay, so what do these bladders do? They fill up the bladder with air. Now say for example, if I blow up a balloon, okay, and leave it just like that, okay, it will be floating. Okay, similarly in the fish's bodies also, or in the seal's body also, they will be bladders. Okay, so when the seal takes in air, or not the seal, I'm sorry, seal is a mammal, so it will have a lung. So when the fishes takes air into its bladder, or okay, so the bladder makes it to float. So the bladder helps the fish to maintain its buoyancy. Okay, so buoyancy is nothing but ability of an organism to float. Okay, right? So, and if the organism wishes to dive inside, the air is emptied. Okay, so this bladder actually controls the fish from bursting out under high pressure. Excuse me. So under high pressure, this bladder actually helps the fish from bursting out. Why? Because it is maintaining the pressure of the body of the fish according to the outside pressure. So that's why the fish is able to move out. Now, say for example, if you are taking a fish which is say a bottom feeder, or you have caught it, okay, right, and you take it out. Now because of the pressure difference, the bladder of the fish actually comes out. Okay, the bladder of the fish actually comes out. So when it is coming out of the mouth, that means what? The pressure difference, the bladder was trying to maintain the pressure difference, but it was not able to do it completely. So that's why the bladder actually comes out. Okay, right? So these are some of the secrets that how the fishes have adopted, or the animals have adopted to say adapted to swim. Okay, right? Now one more small thing that I would like to tell you here is, now in the oceans, temperatures change sometimes drastically on the surface. Okay, and temperatures don't change, or they are very cold at the bottom. So these organisms have evolved some structures inside their body, which you learn in higher classes, which will help them to regulate their temperature. So say for example, you have a whale. Okay, now this whale has something called as a blubber. Okay, now this whale has something called as blubber. Now this blubber will protect the whale from extreme cold. Okay, and there are certain other organisms like clams and barnacles. Okay, clams and barnacles. Now these clams and barnacles, they stick to the rocks. Okay, they stick to the rocks. Okay, because they don't want to get flown away into the current of the sea, so they get stick onto the rocks. Okay, so these are some of the adaptations and also some of the secrets that are hiding in the marine ecosystem, which is making it very, very effective. Okay, right? Now, I hope that you have understood the class completely. Okay, so I'll see you in the next session. Thank you so much.